Well, hello students, and in today's lesson we're going to go over the major things you really need to be on the lookout for when reading through sheet music, because if you're just looking at the notes, you're only getting a very small part of what the music has to offer, and by paying attention to these things, you'll be able to play with a lot more musicality, and everything will just sound a whole lot nicer. And specifically, you can expect to get more details on playing in different clefs and clef changes and looking out for those, time signatures and time signature changes, key signatures and key signature changes, of course, and how to do those, as well as things like articulations, which tells you exactly how to play the note. Like I said, gives it a little bit more spice, a little bit more musicality in there, and other things including looking out for difficult areas, adding in dynamics. Like I said, a lot of these things, if you add in there, will make your music sound a whole lot better, and actually some of these things, if you ignore, will sound downright awful. So let's get right into the main part of the lesson. Number one thing on this list of things you want to look out for when you're reading through or playing sheet music is clefs and clef changes. Clef changes especially, right? And I think a lot of times what happens is when we're beginners, we are used to treble clef, bass clef, treble clef, bass clef. You know, treble clef on top, bass clef on the bottom. So treble clef, bass clef, just like that. And I think we're used to that, 99% of the time, especially if we're beginners. But what'll happen is you'll start to branch out, like Rich is doing Moonlight Sonata, who is a regular in our live streams. And, that has some clef changes in it that you have to be aware of in the middle of the song. So here is why that is important. So if you get rid of these, it's important because, say I take a look at the beginning here and I say, all right, treble clef with the right hand, bass clef with the left hand, same old, same old. And now I'm going to start the song. Doing treble clef up here, bass clef with my left hand. It doesn't sound quite right. What happened? Well, remember point number 2 on the part of this number 1 on the list is clef changes. I have a clef change right here. So, oops. Even though it said treble clef and bass clef right in the beginning, I didn't look a little bit further before the note started and realized that both of them are in the bass clef. Now, it doesn't mean that you're playing both lines with the left hand. You're just playing the bottom staff with the left hand, still playing the top one with the right hand. Oops. Oh, it sounds a lot better now, doesn't it? So you don't want to miss out on those clef changes. And in music like this, they can happen all the time. So the number 2 thing you want to look out for whenever you are reading through sheet music is, let's take a look, zoom it in, and that is your time signature. A lot of people forget to look at their time signature, and that can have drastic implications, negative implications in your playing, especially if you mistake a 4/4 for a 6/8 or a common time for a cut time, which I commonly do too often. But anyway, you look at the time signature, and you probably know about time signatures already because this lesson just kind of assumes you know that. If you don't, check out some of my other videos on the channel. So here we have 2, 4. I know the print isn't the best here, but you have to ask yourself, what is the time signature telling me? Not just what is it, but what is it telling me? So what it does is the top number tells you how many beats in each measure, that one, and then the bottom one tells you what note gets one beat. So basically what this is telling me is that there are 2 quarter notes in each measure. Remember that if the bottom number is a 4, that means the quarter note gets one beat. If the bottom number is an 8, implying eighth, the 8th note then gets one beat. So just be careful of that. Very, very, very important to look at your time signatures. But not only that, remember when I talked about clef changes, you want to be on the lookout for any time signature changes. And in this song, it doesn't look like, or this piece I should say, it doesn't look like there are any time signature changes we need to look out for. And hey, that's quite all right. Okay, number 3 on the list is key signatures. What is a key signature and what does it tell you? Well, a key signature is, if I scroll in here once again to the beginning here, we have a bunch of flats written right there. There's 4 in each clef, and they're actually the same notes. If you had a note, drawn where each of these are, you would have the notes B, E, A, and D. So this is telling you that every B, every E, every A, and every D in the whole song is flat unless we get to the next number on the list, which I'll talk about in a second. So it tells you what notes are sharp or flat throughout the entire song, or consistently throughout the song. It can, like I said, change. And if you notice, there's 4 down here in the bass clef. They're the exact same 4. So you don't have to worry like, oh, do I have to count the treble clef and the bass clef? It's the same 4. So once you got it figured out, you're reading for the treble clef, that's all you really have to know. And then the same thing. Are there any key signature changes? Very, 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 very important is to look for those. And it looks like actually in this example we don't have any changes. But if you look at the next movement, this third movement here, this movement this first movement is in a totally different key signature, and it's in a different time signature as well. You may see the C here, right, and be thinking common time. Well, nope. Notice how it has a slash through it? That's cut time. That means everything is cut in half. Basically means you're going to be playing your eighths like sixteenths, and your quarters like eighth notes, and things like that. So just watch out for that, because that is very, very important. Okay, this next one on the list is accidentals. What is an accidental? Right? It's not exactly an accident if you think about it. What an accidental is like if you zoom into the middle of the music here, you make it nice and large, you see how there is let it load up here for a second, it's looking kind of crazy. Alright, anyway, you see how you have a sharp there in the middle of that measure that is not part of the key signature. Anything like that, whether it's a sharp, a flat, or a natural, they are all accidentals. Now you may be saying, why are they called accidentals if the composer put them there on purpose? I don't know. That's what they decided to call them. So watch out for those, because those can change things pretty dramatically. So if you're used to playing in a key signature and there's accidentals and you ignore them, it's not going to sound so good. It's not going to be certainly what the composer intended. So be careful of changes. I think that's the big word today throughout all the list of all these, is beware of not only what these things are, but the changes in them as well. And that brings us to the next one, which is patterns. So, I've been telling you, if you've been following the lessons, about scales and practicing arpeggios and all that stuff, these are things you want to be on the lookout in music. So if you take a look at the opening, the left-hand line here in our sonata, whoops. We've seen these before. These are arpeggios. There's a C minor chord. There is like it's kind of like a G7 with a C. So that would be 9. That would be like an 11. Kind of strange chord there. I'd have to analyze it a little bit more. G, B, D. Yeah, it looks like it's a G7 chord with a C there. All right. And then, so you can analyze the chords as well, but I can just see right here, whenever you have a chord, but you're breaking it up separately, you have arpeggios. So you want to be on the lookout for those. There's some arpeggios, and then maybe like somewhere else in the sheet music, you want to say, okay, there is, oh, check it out, check it. Oh, take a look here. Boom, what is this? Oh wait, maybe not all the way to the C. Oh. So boom, what is that? So anyway, you have a scale, right? Now it's not exact, like they kind of change it a little bit here at the end. Whoops. And then you go to a B natural instead of a B flat again. But it's basically a scale. Actually, it is It's actually a C minor scale beginning on B flat. We'll have to talk in another lesson how I figured that out. But anyway, you want to be looking for scale patterns as well. So you want to be looking for patterns in terms of arpeggios, chords, scales, really anything that you practice on a regular basis. Be on the lookout for, because that's why we practice our scales and all that stuff, is so when you see them in the music, you know, hey, I already know how to play that. Not so bad. So here is the next one on the list, and that's number 6 with dynamics. Now, what is a dynamic? Well, dynamics make the music more dynamic. And here's what I mean. So, if I play like that, it's not quite as effective as if I pay attention to the dynamics. And that was how loud or soft you play. So the first time I just played, straight loud the whole time. Second time I put a little bit more nuance into it. I could have even worked, a little bit more to add some in there. So you want to be aware of, the pianos, the P's, the F's, the fortes, telling you how loud or how soft to play. And yeah, and there's other things to it like that. Like there is a forte piano where you hit the chord and then you'd like tie it off with the pedal. Whoops, it's really hard. Like that. You see how it like hit, and then I died it back with the pedal. It takes a little bit of nuance to get those. And then you just go through and you'd look for any dynamics you have. You have pianos, you have fortes, sforzandos where you hit that note with a bit more oomph. And then you're going to back off again right away with the sforzando. Cresh, C-R-E-S-H, C, that's how letters work. Reminds me of Shesk a little bit. Cresh stands for crescendo, and that tells you you're going to be getting louder, right? Crescendos can also literally look like, the Pac-Man kind of thing. I don't know, it's like, my younger students always tell me they look like alligator lips or alligator chompers. Okay, that brings us to the next one, which are articulations and other little like ornamentations that tell you not only what notes to play, but how to play a note. So for instance, here we have right in the first measure some staccatos. Making sure to play those short, you have your slur lines. So you're going to be connecting those, and really pretty much anything. I mean, there's also accents, there's all kinds of articulations, which, like I said, are just those little symbols that tell you how to play the notes a little bit differently. Okay, and then another one we're going to sneak in here is tempo. Tempo tells you how loud, or not how loud to play, how fast to play. So you see in the beginning it says allegro, so that means playing fast. And actually, if you go online, you can find a range that allegro is in. Each of these Italian words has like a range of speed they go in. And then what you do is you plug that number in your metronome, and then you find out what the real tempo is. Now, the very important thing to bring up about this is that you will not start at a fast tempo. You're going to start practicing these, especially songs like these, very, very slow. Even me, and how I practice today, I would start something like this at maybe half tempo if I'm practicing through it the first couple of times. All right, and then be aware of any tempo changes that may occur. It's usually only between sections, but certainly can happen, and be aware of all the tempo changing words like accelerando, and then poco poco, and well, that's like little by little, and things like that. I'm trying to think. Oh, a tempo. A tempo is resume the original tempo. So if you're in accelerando, you're going to speed up, and then you say a tempo, and that brings you back to whatever tempo you start with. So be aware of those words as well as where they happen in the music. And anything you don't know, by the way, is very important for this lesson. Anything you don't know, please look up or ask me what it is. And then the last one is difficult areas. Where are the difficult areas in the song? Glancing through the first few times. And it's like, all right, well, why is that important? Well, that's because you want to mark down in your mind as soon as possible where the toughest areas are, because that's where you want to start practicing. and spend the most time practicing. You'd be surprised, not or maybe not as surprised, how often students just play the measures they're good at all the time, and that will not get you nearly as far as if you start with the problem areas and be as efficient about your practice time as you possibly can.